Last but not the least, we have our last panel discussion for the day, themed as Future of Security and Cloud Technology in Oman. For that, we have our eminent moderator, Mr. Vasudevan. He is the head of digital and service quality at United Finance Company, Oman. And we also have our dear panelist, Mr. Sabu. He is the unit head of IT infrastructure at National Bank of Oman, followed by another renowned panelist, Mr. Abdulaziz Al-Qasmi. He is the IT operations manager at Shell Oman Marketing Company. And of course, we have Mr. Basim Allawati. He is the senior manager, cloud virtualization, network, data center, security, platform at Oman Airports Management Company. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Mohammed Al-Abbadi. He is a senior cybersecurity professional at a confidential entity. A fantastic topic that will look at what's to come and how each one of you are vital to the development of the Sultanate of Oman. Ajit, welcome, and the stage is all yours to moderate.
Thank you, Bridget. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, you are.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed a privilege for me to be attending this, being a part of this summit. I was here yesterday as well. I've been listening from 2 in the afternoon today, and to be honest, it has been a very educative and very informative session, and really happy to be a part of this. I have a very good, experienced, eminent panelist with me, Mr. Sabu, Mr. Mohammed, AlAbbadi, Mr. Abdulaziz, and I also have Mr. Basim. Yes, Mr. Basim is also there on the screen. So a very good afternoon to my team. I hope all of you are doing fit and fine today. Okay.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Yes. So we are discussing on the security aspects with respect to Oman, and how the IT and cyber security and the cloud architecture has been shaping up in Oman as a country is basically what we are talking about. And just to give you a brief on to start off, yesterday we had Dr. Saud talking to us, and the speech by Dr. Saud Salim was very motivating to everybody. Some of the initiatives taken up by the Oman government is really path-breaking, I would say. For example, he was talking about the Cloud First program. In every initiative, the government departments are looking at cloud as the first option for data and for security and things like that. The accreditation programs for hosting government data and for cybersecurity, that's another really commendable initiative by the government. Another great initiative, as explained by Dr. Saud, is the open data policy to ensure safe and secure data availability across users. So, and it was really very encouraging to note that the government is keen to invite private participation on cloud computing and cybersecurity. So, what made it very clear was, the government and the Oman government is very keen on bringing a platform and to motivate private partnership in cloud related areas and the related security aspects. That being said, I would like to go to Mr. Abdulaziz. Mr. Abdulaziz, we can't see you. If you could switch on your camera, it would be good. Mr. Abdulaziz, first of all, according to you, you are a senior person with a lot of work, having done a lot of work in the cloud and cybersecurity area. why do you think, what is the need for enterprises to probably shift to a cloud-based architecture? What is your thoughts on it?
Well, there are a number of reasons and benefits when it comes to the cloud, using cloud or shifting to cloud in Oman. First of all, it's controlling your cost. That's control of the cost. It's basically taking you from away from your traditional high operating cost of your IT. So what you are spending today on operating your IT infrastructure. And as well, in the flexibility of cloud, where you can pick and choose the applications or the servers or the features you need. So instead of you are going for and buying of a flexible system on a full software package, and always that it will end up with additional update cost and maintenance and services. And there are other elements where it makes you shift to the cloud, or the benefit of out of shifting to the cloud. You have the flexibility to increase servers capacities, or adding users, or managing and an increase on your business demand. So you don't have to tied up with the long terms commitment with the infrastructure companies or procurement cost. So there are another benefit, which where working in cloud, that's make you always up to date, and always having easy access with the latest versions of your software or applications or tools you are using. So that's again, if you have your infrastructure and your promises, and again you need to spend people. They are the people who have to look after, and you need to look after your infrastructure and apps, tools, all this kind of works. It makes easy for you by moving on the clouds. That's the one of the beauty benefit out of shifting to the cloud. All clouds, as you know, that's from leading security. We talk about security. I know in promises that you need to spend a lot of time of monitoring your security as well. You need to have firewall, you have to monitor it. I mean, there are so many things you need to do it, where instead of all of this, you can go for the cloud. As all of you know, that all cloud centers across the world, they are monitoring 24/7 by cybersecurity expert people. And always they have the intelligence systems that prevent you and protect you from a security breach. This is one of the beauty as well, benefit moving to cloud. And don't forget about your data security and and your storage. So today, data is something, it's very critical for everyone, and from a privacy perspective, from a policy perspective. So all of this, it's lead you to hire more stuff to look after your security, from preventing and protecting your data. But the beauty on what is called a cloud base, you don't have to think about it, because they are taking care about all of this aspect. And as well, the reliability of the solution, optimized technology, and innovated and adapt. And as well, today, getting access from anywhere. So getting access to your application is not necessarily to have build a bridge where to come from your promises, either network or services. So this is how the benefit of what it call shifting to the cloud.
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely.
audible?
Yes, Abdulaziz, we could hear you very well. And what you said are really relevant points. The advantages and the reasons why an enterprise would shift or think of shifting to a cloud structure. But what do you think? When does it make sense for an enterprise or a company to actually shift to a cloud-based computing structure? When does it make actually sense for them to do it?
Okay, good question, Ajit. Now they are depend on your situation, no? You need to evaluate your current situation. So you have to focus on. I mean, let's categorize your what is called organization needs, okay, or structure. So you have a service, you have a technology landscape, there is a cost involvement. So you need to evaluate your situation. So now the first things what you have to do when it comes to the service, for example, you need to understand how important are the security to my business, and do you have the reliability and flexibility to my business? Do I'm providing that reliability and flexibility to my business from a service perspective? Is your current solution meet your needs, your business needs? And as well, you need to ask yourself another question: that is there a room of improvement? Do I have a space to improve? So this is from a service perspective. And then you need to go for the another category, which is the technology landscape. From how many business users you have for your business? How many users are there? 100, 1,000, 10,000. I mean, when it comes to, like, for example, for our organization or similar organization, they have thousands. I mean, 100 or million, what it called users, no? So that's, you need to evaluate how many of your business users, and what is your graphical distribution of the user base. Is it in one area? Is it in a different areas? And then you need again to ask yourself, when it comes to the technology of your landscape, do your employee require the remote access? So those questions you need to ask yourself when it comes to the technology landscape. And now then you need to ask yourself about the cost. Sorry, are they satisfied with the cost of your on-premises solution? So today you have a solution at your premises. So is this cost is sufficient? Is it satisfied with what you are paying? Are you getting exactly on what you are paying? Do you need that one? And is this cost can be scale up or upgrade service with acceptable cost? I mean, so to do that for your infrastructure, there is an investment, right? Then you need to look on those kind of elements. Now I can give you some examples where some organizations, it makes sense for them to move to move to cloud. If when you see that you cannot afford an on-premises solution, so you cannot afford on-premises solution, then definitely cloud will be your great and affordable alternative solution. And there are another scenario where when your on-premises solution is outdated. So today your infrastructure is outdated. How much going to cost me to improve that one, or to enhance it and to upgrade it? So that's cost. Is it affordable? Is it sufficient? And then again, you know, most of the companies, they are not an IT organization. So the number of when you have, I mean, your IT staff are small. So do I need to procure or hire additional stuff? So managing in-house IT, it's required a lot of expertise. So instead of doing that,
sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Abdulaziz. So basically, what you are trying to say is, you know, it really makes sense, because some of the major criteria would be whether we have a need or a necessity to actually move to a cloud structure, whether we have the investment that is made, the money to make the investment, and whether the investment would actually justify the benefits that we get out of the cloud structure, whether we have the necessary in-house know-how and the resources, people to actually manage the whole thing. I think these are very critical factors which would be you know, deciding on which are the areas to be considered while deciding on whether to move to a cloud structure. Thank you very much, Abdulaziz. I would like to go to Basim now. And Basim, just as Abdulaziz was explaining the things on why somebody would want to go to a cloud structure, we are, another primary concern when we move to a cloud computing architecture is on the security aspects of our data and our especially confidential data with respect to our customers and things like that. How safe is it, and whether the cloud service provider is able to provide all the necessary security compliance and regulatory strictures. So this is one concern, and we have seen in the last probably couple of years the number of cyber hacking incidents have increased globally. So what, according to you, Basim, is what can be done to minimize the probability of being compromised from an enterprise's point of view?
Well, thank you, Ajit. There are a lot of good practices that can be followed to really minimize the probability of getting compromised. Because again, security is so wide, and there's nothing called 100% security. So on top of that, the first thing on that good practice list, I would say that is changing in the culture of all the users, not only in IT. What we see normally, people focuses on IT users and make them aware about the security. But I would say that we need to do it across the organizations. As we can see, there's a big success ratio in the organizations which are getting compromised using spam mails. And there are a lot of solutions which are currently available and at a very affordable price point as well, which can simulate your spam mails. And then you can review the reports and know who has really got into that trap, and then provide them further awareness. Further on that, we can reduce the surface of attack by taking a lot of interfaces that we have exposed to the internet out of that. Like, we can still see, unfortunately, a lot of employee portals, which are only to be accessed by the employees, are available on the organization DMZs. So these are not really good practices. You can replace that simply by using a simple VPN solution protected with a 2FA, and allow them to access the same systems using a VPN, but your exposure to the internet will be minimized. You can also add to that the geofencing of the same. You can geofence your VPN connections. You can even geofence from where the your portals which are on the net are accessible. And now I'll go a bit back to the basics, because in the last few months, what we have seen, for example, for the Exchange attack, which was attacked widely over the web, a lot of people take a lot of time to patch their systems. They do not take patching seriously. And on the other hand, most of the organizations which you have seen are patching only their operating systems. They forget their applications, they forget the databases, and they forget even their appliances like firewall, routers, switches. They forget that there's a software running on that can be vulnerable as well. And then further, to minimize the probability of getting compromised, we need to always keep all the critical infrastructure, like the servers, the switches, accessibility, behind jump boxes. So only particular jump boxes can access this critical infrastructure. And again, these jump boxes should be protected with a 2FA. We know that stealing passwords became so easy for these attackers. They're very smart. And whatever currently I spoke about is almost available to any organization, because a lot of organizations doesn't want to spend right now due to the COVID and their budgets have been cut. But all what I spoke about are already available with any organization. It's just practices and some tweaking in the design. We can further minimize the damage when an attack takes place by microsegmentation. Yesterday, in one of the presentations, they were showing that the lateral movements, which happens via RDP, are around 74%. And there's a very simple solution for that. You can use even the host-based firewall, no need to buy a solution for microsegmentation, and restrict such connectivities only from specific IP addresses. All these things can really minimize the probability of organizations getting compromised. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, perfectly, Basim. And the good thing is most of the things that you just mentioned, these are all things which are already there. The infrastructure which are already there in many of the companies in Oman, which is a very positive thing that you talked about. But then, Basim, what I would also want to hear from you is in terms of the business continuity when it comes to a cloud structure. What are your thoughts on business continuity part of it?
Well, I can answer this question into two parts, let me say it. Number one would be, when we are going to cloud, we need to make sure that we are selecting a reliable cloud provider. And that cloud provider should not be only available in a specific country. It should be available across countries, because what if that country goes into a war, God forbids? Your business should never be impacted, and your business should continue from the remote locations of the same cloud provider. The other thing on the business continuity, if the organization is not really into cloud, again, what we have seen recently in 2020 and 2021, a lot of organizations got compromised and they had to pay their ransom, which shows us that they did not have their recovery plans in place. As we know that backing up is one thing, but successful restoration of that backup is completely a different thing. And this shows that they have never maybe tested an end-to-end restoration of their entire infrastructure. There are a lot of scenarios that people have to build when it comes to the restoration and the recovery of their systems. What if your backup server itself has been compromised? How would you recover your backups? Do you have a documentation showing you to build your backup server the way it was? What if your main authentication source, which is your Active Directory, for example, in most of the organization, is being compromised? Do you have your red envelope in place to access them and access the local credentials to bring back or to access your backup system and restore your Active Directory? Have you conducted drills, restoration drills of such scenarios? Did you test your runbooks? There should be runbooks for each and every scenario, and they should be tested periodically, because efficiency and even the timely manner in restoring these services impacts the business completely. So
I think sorry to interrupt you, Basim. So what I'm hearing from you is that although enterprises move to a cloud structure, it doesn't mean we can forget it and keep it there and just forget about it. We still need to do our basics and get our basic business continuity plan and the processes in place. It is not that we move the whole thing onto a cloud and then we rest assuming that everything is a responsibility of the cloud service provider. I think that is basically what you're trying to convey. Thank you very much, Basim. I would like to go. Sorry. Yes, Abdulaziz.
Mr. Ajit, I do have a question to you itself.
Yes, please.
Okay, so what is the role of business management when it comes to shifting to the cloud architect?
Well, when it comes to the management perspective, from the management points of view, there are certain things which needs to be put into perspective. One, as Abdulaziz yourself, you were talking about, is the cost involved, and I think even Basim was hinting about it. The cost involved in shifting to a cloud computing structure is one of the most critical areas which definitely the management would look into. The cost and the benefit, the cost-benefit analysis is really one of the critical things. Secondly, again, is the security, which all of us have talked about. One critical factor which I have seen whenever we talk about cloud in an enterprise is it is always the IT department, or the IT security and the IT related departments and the CIO that are usually involved in this matter. Usually people like the CEO or the auditors and the risk and governance guys in the company, they have just heard this from afar, and so they're not very clear as to how these things work. because there is a basic difference. There are basic differences on how the risk and governance and how the auditing is done in a cloud setup, and how it is traditionally done on an on-premise system. So the point is, the entire management team, right from the CEO and the auditors, the risk guys, the CFO, everybody has to be taken along in the change. It is not a segmented, a silo working on digital transformation onto cloud structure, but it has to be the entire senior team, because the buy-in is very, very important. Otherwise, there are always questions which are left unanswered. And so that understanding and that buy-in and that confidence needs to come top down. And that is one of the major critical success factors for a cloud transfer. I hope I have answered your question reasonably well, Abdulaziz.
Indeed. Thanks.
Thank you. I would like to go to Sabu quickly. I think we are running really short of time, so we need to be crisp and to the point. Sabu, you are from a financial services background, so I would like to hear from you, on how, with respect to, when you look at it from a financial services enterprise background, how do you, what is your take on the challenges when you talk about cloud structure?
Thank you, Ajit. Let me talk about two major hurdles in this context. So, see, basically, banking industry is heavily regulated and compliance-centric. So in Oman specifically, all institute has to follow the strict standards set by central bank, in addition to their internal risk benchmarks, policies, and as well as other international standards which they need to follow, such as PCI DSS, ISO 27001. Even central bank has recently released a framework specifically for cloud services. That also is really exhaustive. Plus, not just industry specific, but overall data security, which everybody has talked about. Securing your highly confidential data. So being prepared for what is there now and prepared for the future, like all these coming regulations, how you will be prepared when you're moving to cloud, that will be a major concern. Because the data right now, it's protected on-premise with your highly secure data centers, with all these next-gen securities in place. So moving it out of premises and meeting all this security and regulatory compliance is a major challenge in my view. The second thing is like business case and ROI. So when you are trying to sell your cloud story internally, so the management point of view will be you're going to save from day one when you move to cloud. So that might not be the case, right? So when you are about to justify, since you already heavily invested on the on-prem infrastructure, like organization like us, we have highly scalable data centers. So it will be a huge challenge for us to justify that business case. So in reality, the value of the cloud comes from the speed, agility, innovation, and scalability than the potential IT savings. Savings will happen on the way along. So what we need to focus on your business case and the approvals on the intangible benefits, such as the time to market, etc. So in that way, or these are the two challenges which specific to my
Absolutely. I agree with you. One of the key challenges when it comes to financial services, I feel, according to me, I think would be the financial transaction security in terms and the confidentiality, because financial transactions are pretty confidential and pretty serious, and time should be done and completed within a particular amount of time. So, so those are probably the concerns when it comes to financial services. I will come back to you, Sabu. I have one thing I want to ask you, but then before that, I would like to go to Mohammed. Mohammed AlAbbadi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Mohammed, I heard Sabu talking about time to market, which is a very, very important concept. What, according to you, Mohammed, I would like to know what you feel on, the time to market when it comes to cloud approach. How does it impact the cloud to market? I mean, the
If
time
we're
to market.
talking purely security, basically you're asking to be at the speed of business, right? Time to market, the closer, the better, the first. That means a better advantage from business perspective, right? And we know that security usually is a cumbersome, a showstopper, sort of. That's the classical view of security. But seriously, I mean, in the last few days, when I say sorry, a few years, we're talking about like 5, 10 years back, things started to get better in terms of how security is already embedded, how fast technologies are being in place, how automation is being embedded into security technologies as well. But if it boils down to maybe two things, of course, Basim had touched upon the culture and the technologies as well. I'm going to add to that the process and perhaps the communication, right? The closer the security is to the business, so being involved on part of that layer, the easier and the faster security would be aware of, let's say, take it from an architecture perspective on an enterprise level. So you could think of the architecture one way. So you know exactly the project pipeline of what's going to be happening in the next maybe 3, 6 months, maybe a year. And from that perspective, you can even put the dependencies from security perspective. And that way you're never having a surprise from a security perspective, and nothing is going to be delaying that. And having said that, now it's all about that frictionless planned activity, right? So part of that would be, for example, if you are within a CI/CD, like continuous integration, deployment, and so on, or even the classical just a release every now and then using maybe a waterfall mechanism and so on. It's all about delivery, right? So it's making sure, for example, that your developers are enabled, they have the tools that are already embedding security within, like static, testing, or even having other automated tools within, the pipeline. So when something is wrong, it's either getting patched or being alerted quickly, or sometimes even from an approach perspective, just like the big unicorns, we know that there is a risk that's going to happen at some point. Let it go. We're going to release it as long as it actually reaches maybe 70%. And then later we're going to deal with it. So more or less, I would actually put that those are the mechanisms to make sure that we're enabled, aligned, and at the speed of business.
Perfect, Mohammed. What I think, what I take, my understanding of what you're trying to say is the security should be an inherent part of every activity in the enterprise.
Absolutely.
And
Embedded.
be it development, be it business, be it whatever, the security angle of it should be an inherent inbuilt part of the life cycle of the entire process. Perfect. I agree with you. Going back to Sabu, one question that because you being from the financial service industry, it's pretty interesting for me. So I come back to you again. Could you tell me, what are the essential security controls and strategies that are required when it comes to cloud computing from a financial standpoint?
Thank you. I just want to put the context before pre-COVID and the situation now. Since the onset of COVID-19, bank everywhere is talking about cloud. So mainly it's specific to banking. So IT systems has been experienced unprecedented workload, reaching levels of usage which we used to see, on the peak time in a year. See, due to the heavy usage of the digital channels, since people are sitting at home, the travel is restricted, everybody start depending on the digital channels. So the requirement or the capacity requirement are heavy. So especially during this COVID time, on-premise model, the limitation is for you to upgrade the system, you need to secure a hardware. So for that, delivery time and all will be a huge challenge. So during this pandemic time, everybody's seen the real value of cloud, where you could scale up and scale up based on demand. You could skip many of these development cycles, which you need to experience if you're on-prem. Now, moving to the cloud adoption part, what are the essential security things which we need to do? Now, the first thing will be, you need to be clear on your regulations part. Like I mentioned, in Oman, most of the banks need to ensure they are complying to the cloud framework set by central bank. So if you look at that, then your options will be limited to going with local cloud providers. They're clearly saying most of the use cases, we are not allowed to go on the public cloud, such as Amazon, Google, or Azure. So you need to find the options which are available within Oman. So this is the main thing which you need to be clear of. The second thing is we need to set our internal policies, internal security policies, the risk assessment things in place when you are moving to cloud. So once you set all these standards, it will be very easier for you to compare based on your workload you are selecting, what kind of security mechanisms to be there, especially data security. So data in transit, data at rest, data in use. So what kind of security requirements are there when you're going to put it in cloud? Then when you identify your cloud provider, local cloud providers, you should be able to get in detail on the contract since it's going to be a shared responsibility. Now, certain things or critical infrastructure, now it's going to be managed by the cloud provider. So we need to make sure that all the SLAs, the uptime is going to be maintained as per our critical service requirement. The next thing is the security requirement. Suppose you have your mobile banking or the critical public facing services, the security requirement will be totally different than that of your test and development environment or your non-critical application. So you should be clear on what level of security you need. Based on that, your the cloud model and security requirement will change. So since it is a vast topic and with the limited time, I just want to stop here.
Sabu, thank you very much. You did tell a lot of things in that limited time. Basically, what I understand, to summarize what you basically told is one, the regulatory requirements of the country where we are, the enterprise is. In our case, it is Oman, which is very, very critical. We need to be complying to all the rules and regulations of the country where we are. And secondly, it is very important to consider the rules and regulations of where the cloud server is actually located. So many a times the regulations do not match, and it is very difficult for people to actually manage both the regulations. And as per the Oman regulations, we need to have the cloud in Oman itself, which is what you pointed out very rightly. The second thing is in terms of the confidentiality of the data that we're putting up on the cloud servers, which is again very critical. And the third thing is, as I was trying to say earlier as well, no matter whether we have the data on the cloud or not, we need to have our basic IT security and other related infrastructure in place. We cannot forget or shirk our basic responsibilities just because we have moved our services or we are using a cloud platform, or we're using a network over the NAS, or we are using a cloud for whatever reasons. We need to always ensure that our basics are in place and are being updated, and the policies and procedures are being followed and be reviewed regularly. I think that's what basically you're trying to convey, Sabu. Thank you very much, Sabu. I would come back to Mohammed. Mohammed, we've been talking about the cloud and the whether we need to shift to a cloud, what are the security concerns and things like that. One area we haven't talked about, and I would like to hear it from you, is in terms of the analytics. How does consuming analytics over the cloud, what are the security concerns there, and what are the other concerns there when it comes to analytics?
Right. I thought I'm actually off the hook, but yeah, I'll try to.
No ways, buddy.
See, briefly, really, this is just like normal people relationships. So a concept of trust, but be careful, if you want to actually put it that way. The challenge with analytics that even with POCs, we need to actually use the production data, whether it is historically and so on, but eventually some sort of production data needs to be sent to the cloud. Of course, I'm going to get into that, the two parts of it. So assuming that we're doing a POC or an actual demonstration or working with a SaaS provider or cloud provider, we need to do our homework, right? So the due diligence. Now, a lot of use cases from an analytics point of view might not be provided by all the known names. And that's why business would usually go or lean into those new startups. From pure analytics perspective, they're going to be brilliant in terms of the the use case, especially within the industry. Unfortunately, a lot of times they wouldn't be focusing, especially from a startup perspective, on security. So one part of the trusting is basically doing the due diligence, going into third-party assessment, understanding the security rating, going into surveys, cloud assessment, sometimes even going through the documentation, compliance, regulations, certifications that already have in place. Some of them, they even have packages ready for security. So all that you have really to do is to go through them and it's done. To understand how the cloud is designed, how the data is mingling, what kind of retention of data they would put in place. Do they actually, if by mistake, any personal data, that's basically assuming that there is no need for the personal data for the use case, reach to their parameter? Do they have some sort of randomization or anything for that as well? All of that would actually fall under the due diligence. But at the same time, the responsibility falls under both of you, right? So it's whoever is providing the analytics service to you, but actually on you as well. And I think yesterday, Ms. Sri touched upon the data governance layer. So that data governance layer, in addition to or being the same as the security layer, basically as well, comes from that perspective of minimizing the data. So, and the principle of need, like sharing on need on basis only. So basically, you only send or transfer the data elements that needs to be, like sent or transferred to that cloud provider for the sake of the use case. Majority of the times, you do not need to send, PII or personal data, even confidential data and so on. You can be using mapping, you can use randomization and so on. So it all depends really. And in summary, really, after all of that, you'll have to give the vendor a bit of trust and just be ready in terms of if a breach happens, how can that be managed in terms of, incident response, maybe, I don't know, insurance, depends on a lot of other things. But that's briefly what to expect, like just in relationships.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mohammed. I think we have overshoot the time. We had 12 minutes more than the time that was expected. I don't know how Bridget is quiet, but then it was.
She's enjoying the.
I hope so. I hope she's not just left and gone. Bridget, are you there?
I'm very much here, and I don't want to interrupt such a fantastic panel discussion. So it's great to see some fantastic, brightest minds speaking and talking about Oman. So Ajit, you can continue with the discussion if time permits.
Yes, definitely. I think it was indeed a very good discussion with all my eminent panelists, and it is really encouraging and very, very motivating, honestly, to know that a lot of companies in Oman, represented by my eminent panelists here, a few of the companies at least, have really got into the nitty-gritty of cloud computing, and they have, as you have all seen, they have real in-depth knowledge of cloud and the security concerns and things like that, which is a very, very positive and motivating news, at least personally for me, because cloud computing and the related security architecture and complications, etc., is globally a very, very new concept. And I'm really happy to see that Oman and companies in Oman are seriously looking at these concepts and the benefits and the other considerations therein, which is very good. Just as a conclusion to what we have just been discussing for the last 40 odd minutes now, I think the first thing every enterprise needs to be looking at is whether there is a genuine need to shift to a cloud structure. Just because there are cloud is the new in thing in technology, it wouldn't be wise for an enterprise to just pack and move everything to a cloud system. There has to be a genuine need. And when I say a genuine need, the genuine need would be if the costs and the investment involved in terms of money, time, people, resources, etc., will ultimately give value to the business. Whether it is a business enabler in terms of bringing in returns, more revenues to the company, or bringing in more customers basically to the company and bringing in more security to the company, or is it removing a lot of the pain areas which the company now has? Is it by moving it to the cloud? Is it actually shedding those pain areas from the company structure? So those are all the factors to be considered, when actually trying to review the need for moving to a cloud. I think that is one key takeaway. The second thing which I could clearly see coming out from all my eminent panelists was the even if we move our uh, data or our servers to the cloud, we need to still do our basics right. We need to have uh, our homework done. We need to keep doing on a daily basis what we do on a daily basis even today with our servers, on premise. It is not. That is a very important point. It is not that we move the stuff onto the cloud and then we just relax. It doesn't work that way. We still have our responsibilities. We need to ensure that the SLAs are met, the contracts and the tie-ups and the arrangement that we have with the service providers uh, are what we are looking for, and is something that suits our level of business or our type of business. So we still need to do everything that we still continue to do. Of course, with the cloud, there will be definitely some cost benefits. There will be some productivity increase and stuff like that. But then that doesn't mean we can totally rest, and all the IT managers and IT staff are going to go jobless. I don't think that would happen. We still need to have our own backups and our own networks to be maintained, and our own security to be reviewed and monitored and things like that, which is a very important takeaway.
As long as something is not working, we're going to be there. So yeah,
Absolutely. And as long as it's something that's related to our company, we'll definitely be there. One last thing, one last thing that again came up during the discussion was that the whole process of shifting to cloud has to be across the company. It should be a company-wide buy-in. It is not the IT departments, or it's not a bunch of few techies within the company who's really pushing the cloud within the enterprise. It has to be top to bottom, right from the topmost official in the company. Everybody else, people are dealing with finance, people are doing the audits, people doing the risk review, people viewing the compliance aspect, the business heads. Everybody needs to be involved in the transfer to a cloud, if at all the enterprise decides to do it, because ultimately, if our data and if our servers are not on our premises and it is there on a cloud, definitely it brings a lot of changes to how we do things. Rather than currently the traditional way of doing stuff will definitely be reviewed and will have to be changed, and you would have to imbibe different perspectives and different ways of doing things, right from data analytics to audit to review to compliance, etc., and so on and so forth. So these are, I think, a few of the key takeaways which I could summarize quickly for all of you. It was indeed a very, very informative and an interesting discussion with all of you gentlemen. I would like to thank all of you, Basim, Mohammed, Abdulaziz, Sabu, for the invaluable inputs that all of you gave through. And on behalf of the entire panel, I would like to thank Bridget and the entire team behind the organizing team for conducting and this wonderful summit over the last 2 days. It has definitely been a value add to all the businesses in Oman, and I'm sure more conferences and summits like this will definitely bring in more value and progress to not just the country, but the businesses in the whole region as well. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Rajat, we cannot hear
your mic is compromised.
Okay.
I'm on mute. Okay, I'm so sorry. So thank you very much, dear panelists, Sabu, Abdulaziz, Basim, Mohammed, and of course, our dear panel moderator, Ajit, for wonderfully executing and sharing your valuable thoughts around the future of Oman and summarizing the key takeaways towards the end. Truly appreciate your presence here today for the last panel discussion of the Oman Summit, last day of Oman Summit 2021. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thanks.